Well, welcome and everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Jessica Boston and I'm the director of the Career Readiness Center here at Point Park University. Again, thanks so much for joining us on a Friday. We really wanted to bring folks together to just provide an update in the area of experiential learning and to discuss some additional resources that will be helpful as you continue to engage with students for internship and co-op experiences. So during our time today, you will hear from a few staff members from the Career Center, including Dawnese Booker, who is our program manager of experiential learning, as well as Kenny Anderson, who is our coordinator for student and employer recruitment and engagement. So today we're going to discuss several key areas related to experiential learning. You see the agenda here. We're going to talk a bit about those Nace competency updates. Some of you may be more familiar with Nace and the competencies than others, so we're going to deep dive into that for a second. We'll also review some best practices in program management and monitoring. And then we're going to wrap it up with talking a bit about employer engagement and recruitment. We recognize that all of you have wonderful relationships with organizations. We want to provide you with some tips and assistance to most efficiently manage those relationships. So just a few housekeeping tips here. This session is scheduled for an hour, but it will likely last closer to 30 to 45 minutes. We will leave time for Q&A at the end. If you get questions during the discussion, you're welcome to use the chat function to list those questions. And we also ask that all participants keep themselves on mute. So let's go ahead and jump into that first item on our agenda today. Let's talk a little bit about the Nace competencies. So Nace is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They're the organization that we really look to as career services professionals to bring together institutional and industry knowledge, experiences, and preferences as it relates to student recruitment and development. So the Nace career competencies are an agreed upon list of skills that are preferred by employers for ideal candidates. This is really the foundation that we use as career services professionals to develop initiatives and counseling resources and to really ensure that our students graduate ready for success in the workplace and long-term career management. So in 2021, Nace updated the list of their career competencies. Most of these will look familiar to you. One of them has really changed. And the newest one is equity and inclusion, which we're really excited that Nace has included in their new set of competencies. But again, this is the list of skill sets that employers say, if I have two candidates and one is displaying these skill sets and able to perform well in these areas, we're going to hire that person. So again, in the Career Center, we heavily focus on this. We also ask students to reflect and think about how they're developing these skills through their experiential learning experiences as well. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about each of these competencies to add some context to what they mean. So let's start with career and self-development. So this particular competency really focuses on how a student is proactively developing themselves and their career through personal and professional learning. This can include things like being aware of their strengths and weaknesses, conducting career exploration, and even networking and building relationships, both within and outside of the educational institution that they attend. Going with the next one, leadership. So leadership is defined by Nace as recognizing and capitalizing on personal and team strengths to achieve organizational skills. So a student may demonstrate leadership by seeking out and leveraging resources to get feedback from others and inform recommendations for direction, persuading others to achieve a shared vision, or even using innovative thinking methods to go beyond traditional methods. So again, that's another area that's really desired by employers, especially in this day and age. Communication is kind of an obvious one. All employers look for someone who can efficiently demonstrate oral and written communication. But again, the definition here, clearly and effectively exchange information, facts, and perspectives. And students may demonstrate these sample behaviors by developing and employing active listening, communicating in a clear and organized manner, perhaps even asking specific and appropriate questions from their instructors, from individuals that they're working with, and from their peers as well. Again, focusing on both written and oral communication there. Critical thinking, as you can imagine, this really focuses on students' ability to identify and respond to needs based off of situational context. So we're talking about things like, employers are looking for students who can make decisions and solve problems, who can gather and analyze information. And we really focus on helping students practice these skills within our office, as well as through student organization initiatives. And I know many faculty focus on this in their classes as well. So equity and inclusion is the newest member of the Nace competency family this year. This was previously more focused on international and global engagement. So they've changed this one to focus on equity and inclusion. And this really means that we are preparing students to demonstrate awareness, attitude, knowledge, and skills required to exchange and include people from different backgrounds and cultures. And what students may demonstrate in relation to this competency is having an open mind to diverse ideas and new ways of thinking, looking for ways that they can demonstrate flexibility and adapt to diverse environments. And even just, on a smaller level, looking for ways to engage with folks from different cultures, asking questions and trying to educate themselves a bit better on the cultures of the people around them. So again, that's the newest member of the Nace family here, headed into the last three, professionalism. So of course, every employer is looking for a student that can represent themselves and the organization well. So sample behaviors here: showing up to work present and prepared, demonstrating dependability and having responsibility for their work product, and also consistently meeting and exceeding goals and expectations. And as you can imagine, especially through internship and co-op programs, employers are really looking to see that students are developing and demonstrating these competencies. Teamwork, I always tell students, teamwork is not going anywhere. You're going to have to work with teams long beyond your experience at Point Park. And employers seem to agree with that as well. They look for candidates that are able to build collaborative relationships and work effectively with other parties toward a common goal. And again, that's something that we really focus on helping students measure during their internships and co-ops as well. And just to wrap it up here, technology. As we all know, technology seems to advance much faster than I personally can keep up with, but employers really look for students who are able to understand and leverage technologies to enhance efficiencies and complete tasks and goals. So again, these are the 8 skills that Nace, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, have demonstrated that employers are looking for in their top candidates. So again, at the Career Center, we do a couple things through our counseling and through some of our events and such to expose students to these competencies. But a major area that students have an opportunity to build upon these competencies is really through the experiential learning programs, the internship and co-op programs that you all are involved in as well. So before we jump into the next section, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for everything that you do to continue helping our students develop to become the best professional that they can be. And I'm now going to pass it over to Dawnese Booker to talk a little bit about best practices in program management and monitoring for these internship and co-op programs that you all are involved in. Dawnese?
Thank you, Jessica. I hope you all can hear me okay. And so much good information that Jessica shared regarding those Nace competencies. We think about the experiences that students have had operating under basically the cloud of COVID, right? It's no secret that, COVID has impacted student experiences. Maybe the type of experiences that they had, or the amount of experiences or opportunities that they were finding. And again, we cannot say enough Thank you for your support over this time and being flexible and rolling with it as we continue to support our students. But while COVID has certainly had an impact, I do want to look at some numbers so you can see the impact on our end that we're having with experiential learning programs. So this data that you're seeing here is from fall 2020 through summer 2021. And it's a look at the amount of experiences over that time frame. We had 129 total experiences. So students are still finding things. And this breaks down into 114 internships and 15 that were co-ops. So again, we may have seen that the kinds of experiences or even the number of experiences was changing with co-ops with COVID, but certainly students were still finding experiences during this time, and you have continued to provide that support for them. Another piece of information that I wanted to share with you is regarding information that we collect from end of semester performance evaluation. So at the end of each semester, we have students and employers fill out this performance evaluation that gives us feedback on how that experience went, how the student performed. And on our most recent assessment results, we had 70 employers who responded to this question, asking them whether or not that experience provided the student with real-world professional experience. So even though we're operating in COVID and all of these things, how are students doing? What kind of experiences are they having? And of those 70 respondents, 100% of those employers said that yes, this experience provided the student with real-world professional experience. Now, on the flip side of that, of course, we asked students the same question. And again, with our most recent assessment report, we had 68 respondents, and 94% of those students said, yes, this provided me with real-world professional experience. So that's a good number, right? That's definitely good, but there is opportunity there. We still had 6% of students who said, no, this experience did not provide that kind of real-world professional experience. So with that being said, that leads us into a discussion now of what that looks like on our end at Point Park in terms of our experiential learning programs, the internship and co-op, best practices when it comes to program management and monitoring. And then we'll actually even transition over to Jessica and Kenny, who will finish up talking about what that looks like on the employer engagement side of things when we're sharing positions with students and connecting them to opportunities. So first, what are some things that you can do as the faculty supervisor to help support that quality student experience? And I will say, as I'm walking through these things, some of you may be thinking, I already do all of this. This is something I do pretty frequently. It's part of my routine processes and working with students. If so, great, please keep doing that. And if this is something or any of these things are things maybe you don't do or maybe not as much, you'll be able to understand why these things are important and the impact they have on student experiences. So one of the first things that you can do is review assignments to help identify red flags and check on student progress. What I mean by that is students are not always going to, and we know this, volunteer information, right? They may stick to the basics of what are in assignments and may sometimes even get tunnel vision in when they're completing their work. So they may not always volunteer information about things that are maybe not going so well or concerns they may have. So for an example, if you're checking, let's say a weekly activity log, and you note that a student is consistently putting, I made coffee and I made copies, and maybe nothing else, that may be an opportunity to check in with that student. Maybe that's their perception, or maybe that's all they're doing. But that's a good way to help you identify how that student's doing. So kind of reading with that lens of what's really going on here. Also keeping up with communication from the Career Center. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail in a minute about what those specific communications are and kind of when we send them. But we do send information, not necessarily daily or weekly, but updates and information for you as they relate to experiential learning program practices, best practices, policies, and even important dates you'll want to be paying attention to. And that's a two-way street. So again, we send out information, but if there's any time that you are looking for resources for your students as they relate to experiential learning or even career readiness, or how questions or concerns, please do reach out. And then finally, checking in with students. And this is an interesting one because we think about internships and co-ops, and they are not necessarily the same kind of experience as what we think of when we're thinking about the traditional classroom experience, when that student is right in front of you, and it may be a little bit easier to see where they may be or when they may be having challenges. So checking in with students directly, whether that's a phone call, in person, virtual, or even maybe an email, to just see how things are going. Again, a student may be tunnel vision. They're like, I'm going to get this assignment in, I'm going to go to work, and they may not be thinking or even realize there's a place and space for them to share really how things are going. So even asking simple questions like what's going well, what's not going so well, are really good ways to help uncover where a student or when a student may be experiencing challenges. So again, if you're already doing these things, please keep doing them. If not, let's take a look at how you might be able to incorporate these things or do them more frequently. Now, on the other end of that, in my office, there are some things that I do to help support you and the student. So kind of in line with program management, there's resources that we provide to students. After the session, you're actually going to get the link of this recorded session that you can refer back to once that's available, and also a resource sheet referring to a lot of the resources that we're talking about today so that you have access to them. These resources that I share with students, they actually can access them, a lot of them straight on Handshake under the resources section. I'm not going to go over all of them, but there's a lot on that resource sheet. However, I do want to talk through a few of these resources so that you're aware of what kind of information students are getting from my office and from me when I'm working with them. So one of the resources is the Experiential Learning Checklist. So there's one for internship and one for co-op, and it walks the student through the process, starting at, I'm thinking about registering something for credit. What do I do next? Who do I contact? So it walks them through the steps of which departments they need to contact. Also making sure that they understand searching for an internship or co-op as part of the process, and we have resources to help them do that. And then the registration part of that as well. One thing that I do want to note is that this experiential learning checklist is a high-level overview of the processes in terms of like approvals and who they need to meet with. It does not go into department or major specific requirements or eligibility, but it does connect that student with the right office to get that information to make sure that they're meeting any department or major level specific requirements. We also provide students with a guide for how to get their internship or co-op in Handshake. Pretty frequently students hear, oh yeah, you need to do that in Handshake. You need to put that in Handshake. Make sure you put it in Handshake. And for some students, it may be their first time really working with Handshake. So this is just a quick step-by-step guide. It also has a link to a video tutorial if they prefer to view that, on how to get their experience in Handshake and then some reminders about hours and things they need to be doing during the internship, and information for connecting with their success coordinator to register their internship in Point Web. And then another resource I do want to reference is the virtual experiential learning orientation. Students do get this after their experience is approved in Handshake, and it provides them with a couple handouts to view, and then also a video that walks through tips for success for their experience. What to expect in terms of mid-semester check-in surveys, performance evaluations, the role of the faculty supervisor, my role, and who to contact if they have questions or are experiencing any challenges. After they complete that, they do fill out a Microsoft form that shows that they've received everything and reviewed everything. And then we have a few other quick resources for like learning objectives and getting their job description in Handshake that we also are able to provide for students. Now moving on to kind of more program monitoring things that we do, that is the mid-semester check-in survey and the end of semester performance evaluation. So about midway through the semester, which is about where we're getting to right now, I send out surveys to both the student and you as the faculty supervisor to check in and see how things are going with that student's experience. So I do ask things like, how many hours have you completed? Do you feel like if you have questions, you know who to go to? Are you experiencing any challenges, any concerns related to the workplace or your experience? And would you like to connect with me to talk about any of the concerns that you may have? And I also ask the faculty supervisor to, provide information about their students' performance if they have concerns, if students are turning in assignments. Again, a student may not volunteer to me that they're not turning in assignments, but you as the faculty supervisor can obviously, see that and share that with me. And that's an opportunity for me to reach out and connect with the student. I do review those surveys and I look for areas where there may be red flags and reach out to the student and or you as the faculty supervisor. I want to say that this mid-semester check-in survey has been huge. In the time that I have been here, I've noticed there are times where a student may not be on track with their hours or even has had major concerns in their workplace where they simply just said on the survey, I have concerns and I want to talk to you. And we get them on the phone and I discover that there's some major things going on here. And it's a really good way for us to help identify those kinds of things. So the next set of mid-semester check-in surveys are actually going out this Monday. So you'll see that in your email, and we ask that they are complete by October 26th. This is also a really good time for you as the faculty supervisor to have that kind of mid-semester temperature check-in with the student to see how things are going and make sure that they're on track. There may be things that they may share with you that they don't share with me and vice versa. So it's great to have that team effort in working and checking on the student. And then also we have the end of semester performance evaluations. Those are going to be going out November 29th, just as a heads up. They'll be due December 9th, and the results will be sent to you on December 13th. Those go out to the students and the employers to evaluate the student performance. I also review these responses. I'm not necessarily looking for things as they relate to what you might be looking at in terms of grading or evaluating that student's experience. I'm looking at it for maybe if there's any red flags or something or area for improvement that an employer or a student may want to share. And then also sometimes employers will put on there, hey, I had a great experience with a student. We would love to connect with more Point Park students, and I'll connect with them to follow up and discuss how we might be able to share or connect them with students in the future. So again, really good tools here that help us and help even you as a faculty supervisor to monitor that student's experience and evaluate the student's experience. And then finally, communication and update messaging that we send. So I mentioned earlier that we do send out communication. Prior to the start of each upcoming semester, I do send out an experiential learning communication or update email to faculty members. This is sent to faculty members who have students already on my list, who are taking an experiential learning course for the upcoming semester, or even faculty members who have recently supervised, who may not have a student who has registered yet, but it's possible that they may. So if you ever get into the start of the semester, you're like, I didn't get an update email, check with me just to make sure that I didn't miss you by any chance, and I'll make sure that you get that information. This email does have information about, upcoming deadlines. So like the registration deadline. This past semester, after connecting with a couple of departments, we actually set a registration deadline for internships and co-ops as the add drop deadline to help with consistency and with some processing things. With that being said, students may find experiences after the add drop deadline. We know that, but they may have to get additional approvals for that. And that information is all in those emails. We also give you information about what day the mid-semester surveys are going to go out, when the performance evaluations are going to go out, any best practices or information that will be good for you to know, or updates that may have come out, and then any other like programmatic or policy changes or resources that are going to be good for you to know. For example, this past semester, we included information about this school year regarding the vaccination requirement and what that looks like for experiential learning programming. So again, we send out communication. Please make sure you're reviewing that. And like I said earlier, on the flip side, when you have questions for me or may need assistance, please reach out to me. That's what I'm here for, to help provide that support. And then finally, you may be wondering where we get this information from, where does all of this stuff come from, and in terms of what we do on our end. These are some great resources that we refer to when we're coming up with these experiential learning programs and processes and policies. One of those is Nace. That's what Jessica had actually talked through earlier. Those competencies, that's the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Also CEIA, the Cooperative Education and Internship Association, and NSEE, the National Society for Experiential Learning. The information for accessing these websites is going to be on that resource sheet. Some of the articles on these websites are only accessible if you're a member, but they do generally provide good information, and this is what we refer to when we're looking at experiential learning, what best practices we should be following. So now that we've covered some information about best practices for program management and monitoring, Jessica and Kenny are actually going to get into a discussion of what that looks like on the employer side of things, and how you can, pay attention to certain things when you're sharing positions with students.
Thank you, Dawnese. And as a reminder, please feel free to upload any questions that you have to the chat function. I also just wanted to remind everyone that the dates in the email that Dawnese was referring to that she sends out each semester, the information for this fall was sent out on August 26th. However, if you need us to forward you that information again, just go ahead and pop that request into the chat. We'll make sure we get that information over to you today so that you have it. Before I jump into talking a little bit about ways that you can engage employers, I just wanted to thank Dawnese for everything that she's done. I will tell all of you, since COVID has happened, we have noticed an increase in student concerns at the work site. So the resources that Dawnese has mentioned, the mid-semester surveys, you all checking the student assignments that are being submitted to you, communicating concerns to us, is really helpful to make sure that we can help our students through these experiences. We've had situations where a student was working at a site and their supervisor left and they weren't sure who they were reporting to. We had students that told us, what I'm doing does not match my job description at all, and this is not what I signed up for. And we even had some, unfortunately, some more intense complaints related to bullying and sexual harassment at the workplace. And even a student that was working in another city that wasn't having a positive experience, but was nervous that she would be kind of stuck in that location. So she kind of, waited to say something about it. So again, these are not the experiences that we want our students to have. We don't want them to think that this is what they should expect in the workplace. So that's one of the reasons why, we do these check-ins. We ask you to keep a good pulse on how your students are doing and to share any information with us that you see appropriate as well, so that we can help alleviate those issues. But jumping into employer recruitment and engagement, we recognize that all of you have such wonderful relationships with local and national employers. These companies offer great opportunities to our students, and we want to make sure that our students continue to get access to these opportunities. So in our department, we utilize a software called Handshake. I believe all of you are familiar with Handshake. Handshake is a national career services software that brings together institutions all over the country and employers all over the country and international as well. One of the great things that Handshake does is it really allows us to see how trustworthy a particular employer is. It'll tell us if a student has uploaded concerns related to that employer, or if another institution has noted that they had to, had problems with that employer and perhaps had to cut ties with that employer as well. So there's a treasure trove of information that we can see on the Handshake side of things. One of the things that I cannot stress enough, while all of us get folks that reach out to us and share positions and ask for our students to get involved in their organizations, it's really important that we do some of this research first. It's actually a huge risk on us as individual professionals and the institution if we don't make sure that the opportunities we're promoting to students are legal and safe. So there's a couple things that we can all do to make sure that these employers are indeed safe for our students. Kenny's going to walk us through a little bit of a tutorial on what you can specifically do, but I just wanted to kind of break down our guidelines to you so that all of you understand what types of things we're paying attention to as we're considering employers and positions to share with students. So first and foremost, we always look to verify the employer address. As strange as this may seem, I can tell you in my time at Point Park, we've had employers who have invited students to work in their living room, who invited students to work in their basement. Those are not safe experiences for our students. If something was to happen, there's absolutely no one there to intervene. It's one person's word against another, and the student will not feel comfortable in that experience. So we verify the employer address to make sure that it is a physical business location. Now, we do recognize that especially since COVID-19, there are employers who perhaps are no longer working from the office and their experiences are 100% virtual. Exceptions are considered for those employers that do have 100% virtual experiences. But again, we're pretty clear that students cannot cross that line and work from someone's personal residence. And just to give you an idea of how we verify those residences, of course, we look at the information that employers are sharing with us, just their general location. We compare that to the information that's online through websites such as Google. We also look at Google Maps images, and I will tell you why that's really important. A couple years ago, we got an employer that shared experiences with us. It seemed awesome. It seemed like it was going to be a wonderful experience for our students. We looked at the Google Maps image, and the address that they provided was actually a field. And so we asked the employer, could you send us a list or a photo of your building where the students would physically work from? And the employer was not able to send us that photo. So as you can imagine, we don't want to send students to go work in the middle of a field or at some unknown location. So these are the reasons why it's so important for us to verify the employer address. They also do things such as sending us a picture of a piece of mail that they have that confirms their address. And we also will go into business records to confirm that information as well. Again, this is one of the areas that we do a lot of research to make sure that our students are working in a safe environment. We also review the company website. You would be amazed at the number of companies that don't have a website at all, or companies whose phone number, email, and physical address don't match the information that they're giving us on Handshake. So if the company does not have a website, or if their information does not match up, that's typically a red flag that there's something going on there. And we typically do not proceed with these types of companies unless a specific person internally can vouch that, that information is correct and help that company get their information to be consistent between what they're providing to us and on their website. So for instance, for the faculty members that might have a great friend that has a business, they just haven't gotten the website off the ground yet, perhaps they're looking for a student to help with that. If there's someone internal that can really vouch for this company, that's when we begin to negotiate and see what types of things may need to be done there. Again, I can't mention this enough. When we're recommending experiences for students, we are assuming a certain level of risk. So I highly recommend that you only, put your neck on the line for those employers that you are 100% sure about. We also, as I mentioned, review company contact information. We typically, and this is best practice across all institutions, we typically do not connect with companies that do not have an organizational email domain. So if it's something such as Gmail. One of the reasons for that is because a lot of times that might indicate that this is a business that's just getting off the ground, which doesn't mean that that's a bad experience for the student. But what that means is that there may not be appropriate structure at that organization quite yet for the student to succeed. It also gives us an idea that the students may be hosted by the organization, not for a learning experience, but used as free labor, so that they can fill the place of what would otherwise be full-time employees, which is illegal according to the Department of Labor. So we try to keep an eye out for these types of things, again, to make sure that the students are having the best experiences possible and the most safe experience. Just a couple other things that we look at on our end as well. As I mentioned to you, we have access to Handshake to view existing employer complaints as well as red flags. We also utilize websites such as Glassdoor, sometimes even Reddit, to give us inside perspectives of how employees and students are perceiving experiences at this employer site. So again, if you have a company that you want to connect your students with, it does take a little bit extra time, but go ahead and check in Handshake to see if Point Park is connected to that company or not. If Point Park is not connected to that company, I highly recommend that you connect with us in our office to see why we're not connected with that company, or perhaps it's a new company that we need to go through the review process for. So again, this is not meant to add additional steps onto your plates. We recognize all of you share positions with your students. We really want to make sure that you're sharing the most safe experiences with your students. The last things that we do, of course, we check into LinkedIn. So we look for organizations that seem like they only have 1 or 2 employees, or perhaps there's a high level of turnover. That gives us an idea that perhaps there is an unhealthy culture at that organization, or something more is happening there. Lastly, we conduct a general internet search for any alarming information. As I mentioned, Glassdoor and Reddit are both great resources for this information. And as needed, we will have a phone call or physically visit the office site. We do all of these types of things for employers who are requesting to connect to Point Park, who we have some questions about. So again, if it seems like it might be a sketchy employer, or perhaps the students might not have a great experience, we go through a pretty thorough process to make sure that if we're approving this company to engage with our students, we have a good feeling that this is going to result in great experiences. And just an example, another example to give you here, there was a company recently that wanted to connect with our students, and they gave us a physical business address. I actually drive past this supposed address each day coming to work. And so I knew that one, the address they gave us was actually a cemetery, and two, there was no business on that road by that name. And so, when we have experiences like that, we have to put ourselves in the student's shoes. If a student's going to an interview, um, do they have clear ideas of how to get here based off of, the address? If it is a difficult location to find, for instance, we have some employers that say, I don't have a big sign, but I'm located in this building. We let them know that they need to be very clear in their interview instructions so that students know where to go. And again, we really try our best not to make it difficult for the good employers to recruit our students, but to make it really difficult for our students to get the best experiences. And before I pass it to Kenny, the last thing I want to mention is that we recognize that an employer could be great for 3 years and then things go south. If you ever hear from a student that they're having issues at a job site, or they are getting spam opportunities from individuals, or any complaints about a company, please share that with our office so that we can look into it. Unfortunately, I wish we could say that we can approve employers and then we know forever they're going to be great employers, they're going to provide great experiences, but things happen along the way that we need to be aware of and that we need to make sure that we're responding to in real time. So again, this is really just to give you an insight on the in-depth process that we take on our end to really look at employers that we have some concerns about. I'm actually going to toss it to Kenny Anderson, our coordinator of employer engagement and recruitment, to talk to you a little bit about what you can do from your end on Handshake to verify if an employer is trustworthy or not before you send opportunities to students. Kenny?
Thank you, Jessica, for that lovely introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Kenny Anderson. As Jessica said, I'm the coordinator of employer recruitment and student engagement. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to make sure that it works. Jessica, Dawnese, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so my main role in the Career Readiness Center is to basically create events that are attractive and appealing to Point Park students. Because a recent grad as myself from grad school, I realized that talking to career services in the Career Center is extremely intimidating. And it's a tool that I wish that I used when I was in college. So I kind of want to give that back to Point Park students to kind of urge them to use our office and to create attractive events such as career fairs, workshops, and webinars, anything that you can think of that's career related. We just recently had the Roland School of Business Career Fair, and we're in preparation for the School of Communication Virtual Career Fair now. However, I would like to show you how to kind of search for employers to see if they're approved or declined by our office, and to see if they have any specific flags associated with them. And so far, you've heard about the Nace Competencies, the new ones, including equity and inclusion, best practices regarding things that you can do and how our center can help students, and information that we look for in employer profiles to provide legitimacy in order to make sure that our students are getting the best employer engagement and connections possible. And like I said earlier, I'm going to show a quick tutorial on Handshake, how to kind of search for employers to see if they're approved or declined by our office, and to see if there are any flags associated with them. So after logging on to Handshake, if my computer loads a little bit, it'll bring you to the home screen, which will look like this possibly. It might not look exactly the same, but it'll look similar to this. And the main section that I kind of want to draw your eyes to is the left side. So there's a bunch of different tabs here. The main one that I want you guys to focus on is the relationships tab. This will be the main one for this tutorial. And here there's the contacts section, which is basically all the contacts associated with different employers. If you want to search for a specific staff member or contact with an employer, you can do that there. But the main one that I'm going to be focusing on is the employer section. And this is where you can kind of search for all employer profiles in the Handshake system, regardless if they are connected with our office or not. So it'll bring you to this page here. There's a bunch of different tabs. You guys don't really need to worry about these tabs here, but what I do want you to kind of focus on is this tab up in the right corner where the blue box where it says Find Employer. We're going to use this tab to kind of search for all the employers in the Handshake system. So you can go ahead and click that. And then it'll bring you to this kind of page right here. To search for a specific employer, there's kind of two different search bars. There's one up here next to the Handshake logo at the top left with the search icon. We don't really want to search there. However, if you scroll your eyes a little bit lower behind this Find Employers title right there, you can type in an employer in this section. So we're going to search for downtown. If I can type today, it's Friday, so it's almost the weekend. So downtown CDC. So once you type in an employer, you can either click this blue search box, and if you typed it correctly, it should automatically type or filter in here. You won't have to type in or click this search box. What I will say is Handshake, if you do this, Handshake is very finicky and picky with how you spell employer names. So make sure if there's any punctuation in the employer name. So some employers might have periods, dashes, apostrophes. Now, let's say if CDC had periods in it, I would have to make sure that the periods are located specifically where they're supposed to be. And if you don't specifically spell it right, it won't filter in the Handshake system. What I will suggest is if you're finding that you're having trouble searching for an employer due to the name, try and only type in a portion of the name. So if I just type in downtown, it'll come up with all the partners or the employers that are listed in Handshake. That could get a little tedious because, as you can see, if I scroll down, there's 25 pages here. So try to think of maybe a portion of the name, or if they're located as, or if they're referred to as something different, maybe a different nickname, you can put that in there. But this is what will show up if the name of the employer is typed correctly. What next I want you to kind of recognize is the approval and decline to see if the employer is connected with us. So over on this right side, on the same line as the name, as the employer name, you'll see either declined in red or approved in green. And if it doesn't have anything here, which might be the case, that means they're not connected with the university at all. And in that case, you can either reach out to us, which we highly suggest, so we can send them information regarding Handshake and how they can kind of connect with our office. So here you'll see that downtown CDC is declined. And to view the employer flagged, you just want to click on the profile right there. It's hyperlinked, and it'll bring you to this page. It'll show you the location, their address, different staff members and contacts within the organization, company information right there. But at the top, if the employer is flagged, it'll show this little statement in like a yellow tannish box, and it'll say this employer has been flagged so many times by users in Handshake. Please use extra caution, and you can view the employer flags for more information. And this part right here, it'll be hyperlinked. So we're going to go ahead and click that, which will bring you to this page. Now, before it said it was only flagged by one user in Handshake. So there's only one flag here. And you'll see there's a bunch of different kind of sections within this flag. There's the reason for the flag, additional info, which is basically the meat of the flag, why they were flagged. The user flagged right here. So this will be usually the contact within the organization or a staff member. If it is a specific kind of profile or contact within the organization. But here it just says NA because the whole company itself has been flagged. And then when they were flagged, who they were flagged by at that specific institution, and then the flagger's school. So as you can see, it's a local university, University of Pittsburgh, that flagged downtown CDC. So that's just how to kind of search for an employer and to see if they were flagged. But I'm going to go back to the home screen because I want to show what an approved employer kind of looks like. So at this home screen again, I'm kind of walk through the process with you again. We're going to go through the employer section right there. Bring you to this page again. Top right, big blue box, find employer. And this time we're going to search for UPMC. And as you can see, there's two separate profiles. Not sure why, but they both can post jobs. But since they are approved, it does show right there that it says approved in green. So we're going to go ahead and click on that profile just to see if they have any flags associated with them. And they do not, because as you remember, the downtown CDC profile, they had the statement up at the top in that yellow tannish box to let us know if they were flagged. UPMC is not flagged. So that's just a little bit about Handshake, how you can search for employers on your end to see if they're connected with our office and to see if we've vetted for them, and also how you guys can view the flags to make sure that you're connecting your students with the most legitimate companies and the positions as possible. But that's all I really have for Handshake, employers, and flags. So I'll pass it on to Dawnese for closing remarks.
Hey, Kenny, do you mind if I just jump in for just 1 second here?
Yeah.
Again, as I mentioned, our goal is not to put more work on any of you. We recognize that we are all more than busy. However, we want to make sure that you feel confident and comfortable promoting opportunities to students. We get emails from random employers all of the time. I imagine that you all do as well. Some of them are legitimate and have great experience, and some of them. And so we want to make sure that you have the tools at your disposal to make sure that you are co-signing and promoting great experiences. I will tell you, when a student does not have a great experience, they blame the person that they heard about the experience from, in addition to whoever may be the culprit at the workplace. So again, we want to make sure that we're all doing our part to promote safe, approved experiences to our students. And again, we wanted to open up our toolkit, share it with you, and make sure that you understand how you can view the information associated with each employer profile. So Dawnese is going to close us out here. We'll have some time for Q&A, but if you have any questions in the meantime, again, please feel free to pop them in the chat.
Thank you, Kenny and Jessica. Hopefully all can see my screen and hear me speaking. I do want to thank you all for joining us today. So much information shared, and we hope that you found this information to be useful and valuable for you, and especially when you think about working with students. Lots of the resources that we mentioned during this session will be sent out, just to remind you, with a link to review this recorded session. But I would like to take some time to open up for any questions that we may have. And Kenny and Jessica, I will go by what you say. I cannot currently see the chat box if anyone's typing in the chat.
So far, Mark Wortman just said no questions, but thank you so much for presenting. And Mark, thank you for continuing to engage those IT students. Nothing but great things coming from there. Thank you, Bob. Bob says nothing from me. Thank you so much for attending. All right, Teresa says nothing from me either. Teresa, thanks so much for all that you do for those SAEM students and the entire university. I know you do a lot. So everyone, again, thanks so much for joining us today. We will be sending out a recording of this. We will be sending out some additional resources. Again, the goal here is really just to help keep you informed on what's going on, some of the best practices, and ways that you can further get involved with promoting opportunities for your students. We will likely host another one of these next semester. We continue to just try to keep a pulse on any trends related to experiential learning. So if there's anything that we're hearing from our campus colleagues or national partners, we will certainly share that with you in a spring edition. But again, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful weekend.